In the quiet neighborhoods of Boston, where faith and family once went hand in hand, a devastating secret lay buried for decades. This is the story of a man who wore the cloth of God, but who used it to destroy lives. A man who became the face of a global scandal that would shake the Catholic Church to its very foundation. His name was John Geoghan. John Joseph Geoghan was born on June 4, 1935, in Boston, Massachusetts. Raised in a traditional Irish Catholic home, he was the youngest of 3 children. When John was just 5 years old, his father died suddenly. The tragedy left a lasting mark on his childhood. His mother, a devout and strong-willed woman, immersed John in the rituals and teachings of the Church. As a boy, John was quiet, obedient, and deeply religious. He was drawn to the priesthood early. Some say he saw it as a way to make his mother proud. Others say it gave him a sense of control and moral authority he lacked at home. After years of religious schooling, John enrolled at St. John's Seminary in Brighton, Massachusetts. His teachers noted his devotion, though some questioned his maturity. In 1962, at the age of 27, he was ordained a Catholic priest. What no one knew then was that this new priest would go on to become one of the most prolific sexual predators in the history of the American Church. John's first assignment was at Blessed Sacrament Parish in Saugus, Massachusetts. He quickly gained a reputation for spending unusual amounts of time with young boys. He organized outings, swim parties, and even sleepovers. To the parents, he seemed like a priest who truly cared about the children. But to many boys, the truth was a nightmare they couldn't tell anyone. While Geoghan was at Blessed Sacrament, a man named Anthony Benjevich reported him to the church officials that he was seen bringing boys into his bedroom. Anthony would later deny this allegation. Several years later, after Geoghan's arrest, Anthony would tell reporters that he was branded as a troublemaker for reporting Geoghan, and the church officials hinted that he might be sent to Peru if he persisted. On September 1966, Geoghan was assigned to St. Bernard Parish in Concord. He was transferred just 7 months later. The church offered no official explanation for his reassignment. On April 1967, that is 7 months later, he was assigned to St. Paul's Parish in Hingham. Around that time, Geoghan was there. A man complained to church authorities that he had caught Geoghan molesting his son. As a result, Geoghan was sent to the Seton Institute in Baltimore, Maryland, for treatment for his pedophilia. By the late 1960s, complaints began to surface. But rather than investigate, church officials transferred him again and again. Over the next 30 years, John Geoghan would be reassigned to 6 different parishes, each time under the cloud of new abuse allegations. Each time, the church chose to protect its institution rather than its children. John molested children, dozens of them. He targeted boys between the ages of 7 and 14 years. Many were from broken or struggling homes, and he positioned himself as a protector, a mentor, a friend. Once he gained their trust, the abuse would begin, often in church rectories, on trips, or in the boys' homes while their parents weren't watching. The abuse wasn't just physical, it was spiritual and psychological. Geoghan used his position as a priest to shame his victims into silence, telling them it was their fault that they were sinners or that no one would believe them. In the 1990s, the silence began to break. Survivors started speaking out. Civil lawsuits were filed, but it wasn't until 1998 that Geoghan was finally criminally charged for his actions. By then, more than 130 victims had come forward. But due to statutes of limitations, most of his crimes could no longer be prosecuted. The real explosion came in 2002 when the Boston Globe's Spotlight investigative team published a groundbreaking exposé. It revealed not only Geoghan's abuse, but the systematic cover-up by the Archdiocese of Boston. Internal documents showed that high-ranking church officials, including Cardinal Bernard Law, had known about Geoghan's behavior for decades. Yet, rather than report him to police, they shuffled him between parishes, sent him to therapy, and kept his crimes hidden. The revelations shocked the world. What began as one priest's story opened a floodgate. Hundreds of survivors came forward, not just in Boston but across the globe. In January 2002, John Geoghan was finally convicted of indecent assault and battery for molesting a 10-year-old boy. He was sentenced to 9 to 10 years in prison. It was a hollow victory for many survivors. Most would never see their cases tried in court. Geoghan was sent to Souza Baranowski Correctional Center, a maximum security prison in Shirley, Massachusetts. Even there, he was reviled. Among inmates, crime against children are considered the lowest of the low. On August 23, 2003, just over a year into his sentence, Geoghan was murdered in prison by another inmate, Joseph Druce, a convicted killer serving life without parole. Druce, who claimed to have been sexually abused as a child, lured Geoghan into his cell. Once inside, he jammed the door shut and strangled Geoghan with the bedsheet. Prison officials later found that Druce also stomped on Geoghan's chest and head. Geoghan died at the age of 68. Some saw it as justice served. Others saw it as a tragic end to a story that demanded more accountability. The story of John Geoghan didn't end with his death. His case became the catalyst for a global reckoning. Cardinal Law resigned in disgrace. The Boston Archdiocese paid over $85 million in settlements. The Vatican was forced to confront systemic abuse and revise its policies worldwide. The scandal uncovered the painful truth. Geoghan was not an isolated case. He was one of many. His name is now etched in history, not as a man of God, but as a symbol of a church's greatest betrayal. John Geoghan entered the priesthood to serve others, but what he did instead was destroy trust, faith, and lives. For decades, the system protected him, even as he preyed on the most vulnerable. Today, survivors continue to fight for justice, not for themselves, but to make sure that this kind of abuse is never hidden again. Because evil doesn't only thrive in darkness, sometimes it wears a color.